When people think of Tombstone, Arizona, they often picture Wyatt Earp standing tall at the OK Corral, but behind the legend was a man who pushed him to the edge, Ike Clanton. Hot-headed, ambitious, and always armed with a grudge, Ike wasn't just another outlaw. He was the spark that helped ignite one of the most infamous gunfights in Old West history. But who was he really? A cowardly loudmouth or a cunning figure playing a dangerous game in a lawless land? Hit that subscribe button and saddle up, because we're diving deep into the man who made Wyatt Earp's life a living hell. You won't believe how close Ike came to changing the story of the American West forever. Joseph Isaac Clanton, better known as Ike Clanton, was associated with a group of ranchers and outlaws collectively known as the Cowboys. This loosely organized faction often found itself at odds with lawmen like Wyatt, Virgil, and Morgan Earp, along with their ally Doc Holliday, particularly in the lawless environment of southeastern Arizona Territory. On October 26, 1881, Clanton was present in Tombstone during the infamous confrontation near the OK Corral. However, he was not carrying a weapon at the time and chose to distance himself from the shootout. Tragically, his younger brother, Billy Clanton, only 19 years old, lost his life in the exchange. In the aftermath, Ike Clanton filed legal charges against the Earp brothers and Holliday, accusing them of murder. A 30-day preliminary hearing was held, overseen by Justice Wells Spicer. After reviewing the evidence and testimonies, Spicer concluded that the Earps and Holliday had acted within the boundaries of their authority as lawmen. Later that year, on December 30th, Virgil Earp was seriously injured in an ambush. Clanton's name was linked to the incident, but several members of the Cowboy faction testified that he had been elsewhere at the time. Due to these alibis, he was not held in custody. Several years passed, but Clanton continued to be a figure of interest to law enforcement. In 1887, while a lawman was attempting to bring him in on charges related to cattle theft, Clanton fled. During the pursuit, he was fatally shot near Springerville, Arizona Territory. Ike Clanton's early life. Joseph Isaac Ike. Clanton was born in Callaway County, Missouri, one of 7 children in the family of Newman Haynes Clanton and Mariah Sexton Kelso Clanton. His father was a man of many trades, working as a miner during the gold rush, taking up farming, doing day labor, and eventually becoming involved in the cattle business as the family moved westward. Ike's mother passed away in 1866 when he was still young. Despite the loss, he remained close to his father and siblings. Around 1877, the Clantons relocated to what would later become Tombstone in the Arizona Territory, before the area had gained attention for its silver mines or become a thriving frontier town. At the time, Newman Clanton lived with his sons, Finn, sometimes spelled Finn, Ike, and Billy. By 1878, Ike had set up a modest food stand near the Tombstone mill site along the San Pedro River, an area known today as Millville, distinct from modern-day Tombstone. By 1881, Ike had shifted his focus to helping manage the family's cattle operation at Lewis Springs, located roughly 12 miles west of Tombstone and about 5 miles from the community of Charleston. The Clanton family, along with their hired help and nearby associates, were commonly referred to as the Cowboys. This group had a reputation on the frontier for rowdy behavior and a disregard for formal legal boundaries. They were often suspected of driving cattle across the U.S.-Mexico border under questionable circumstances, and their name was frequently connected to incidents of theft and other unlawful acts, though not all accusations were ever formally proven in court. Notoriety clashes with the Earp lawmen. Ike Clanton's reputation in Old West history is largely tied to his ongoing tensions with Wyatt Earp and Earp's close associate, Doc Holliday. The divide between the Clanton family and the Earp brothers ran deep, rooted not only in personal grievances, but also in conflicting political and legal allegiances. Throughout 1881, this rivalry became more pronounced and increasingly public. During the November 1880 election for Pima County Sheriff, the Cowboys, including the Clantons, supported the sitting sheriff, Charles Chabelle. Meanwhile, the Earps backed Bob Paul, his challenger. This political split only added fuel to their existing disputes, widening the gap between the two groups. Ike Clanton was known for his strong opinions, frequent public remarks, and heavy drinking. His outspoken nature, especially in saloons and public gatherings, contributed to his growing reputation as a controversial figure. Many locals viewed him as someone who talked more than he acted, which both frustrated and amused his rivals. An earlier incident likely intensified the mutual resentment. In late 1879, not long after Wyatt Earp had settled in Tombstone, one of his horses went missing. Over a year later, around December 1880, Earp received word that the animal was being seen near Charleston. Acting on this information, Earp and Holliday traveled to the Clanton Ranch to reclaim it. According to Wyatt Earp's later court testimony, 18-year-old Billy Clanton made a sarcastic remark, asking Wyatt if he had any more horses to lose. Despite the comment, Billy returned the horse without being shown ownership documents, which Earp interpreted as a clear sign that Billy knew the horse had originally belonged to him. Sheriff Johnny Bann, who was sympathetic to the Cowboys, later stated that the situation had left Ike Clanton upset. Wyatt Earp also remembered the moment as one that deepened his distrust of the Clantons. Earp offers Clanton reward money. After being passed over by Sheriff Johnny Bann for the role of undersheriff, Wyatt Earp began to consider a future run for sheriff of Cochise County. He believed that earning a strong public reputation, particularly through solving high-profile crimes, could boost his chances in the next election. One opportunity came after the deadly March 15, 1881, stagecoach robbery near Benson, in which both the driver and a passenger lost their lives. Earp reportedly believed that helping bring the culprits to justice would greatly improve his standing with voters. According to Earp's later statements, on June 2, 1881, he approached Ike Clanton with a proposition. Earp claimed he offered Clanton a financial incentive, specifically the reward posted by Wells Fargo and Company, and possibly more, in exchange for information that could lead to the arrest of those responsible for the stagecoach incident. Earp said the plan ultimately failed when the three main suspects, Bill Leonard, Harry Head, and Jim Crane, died in separate, unrelated confrontations before they could be captured or brought to trial. This setback eliminated Earp's chance to use the case as a platform for his political ambitions. Later that summer, Clanton found himself in a heated dispute with gambler Denny McCann. The disagreement came to a head on the morning of June 9, 1881. While both men were drinking at a saloon on Allen Street, Clanton reportedly made a remark that offended McCann, prompting the gambler to strike him in response. Both men left to retrieve their weapons and soon confronted each other on the street near the Wells Fargo office. Before anything escalated further, Tombstone Marshal Virgil Earp arrived and placed himself between the two, effectively calming the situation and preventing it from turning dangerous. Clanton, Rustling, and Ranching. The Clanton family ranch developed into a thriving operation. During his later testimony following the events at the OK Corral, Ike Clanton stated that over the past year, they had raised and acquired roughly 700 head of cattle. By many accounts, their ranch was among the most financially successful in the region. However, there was a significant legal issue. The Clantons had never officially registered a cattle brand in either Cochise County or neighboring Pima County. Branding was required by law to confirm ownership and ensure lawful cattle raising, making their operations legally questionable. Rumors and reports at the time linked the Clantons to a broader group of so-called cowboys who frequently traveled into Mexico to acquire livestock. These cattle, often believed to be taken without proper transaction, were then brought back across the border and sold to mining camps throughout Cochise County, where beef was in high demand. Notably, figures such as Curly Bill Brocious and the McClory brothers, Tom and Frank, were said to have regularly traded in these cattle, selling them to individuals like Newman Haynes' Old Man Clanton. This cross-border trade thrived partly because the Mexican government had placed steep taxes on goods moving north, making unauthorized trade far more profitable than legitimate commerce. It's important to understand that the so-called outlaw cowboys of Cochise County did not operate as a unified gang. Rather, they were loosely affiliated individuals or small groups engaging in independent activities like cattle trading, smuggling, or occasional theft. Old Man Clanton played a central role in this network. His ranch, located close to the U.S.-Mexico border, functioned as a hub for the movement of cattle and goods, both legal and otherwise, through the area. On August 12th, 1881, Newman Clanton and 6 others were driving a herd of cattle through Guadalupe Canyon. The cattle were believed to have been obtained from Curly Bill. At dawn, as they passed near the border, the group was unexpectedly fired upon by armed Mexican nationals, reportedly acting on orders from Commandant Felipe Neri. In what became known as the Guadalupe Canyon Incident, Old Man Clanton and 5 other men lost their lives. The event sent shockwaves through the region and added another layer of tension to the already volatile borderlands. Gunfight in Tombstone. Ike Clanton had reportedly told several individuals that Doc Holliday, along with Virgil, Wyatt, and Morgan Earp, had privately admitted to participating in the Benson stagecoach robbery. These claims, however, were never supported by credible evidence and were strongly denied by the Earps and Holliday. On the evening of October 25th, 1881, while Clanton was in Tombstone and noticeably intoxicated, tensions escalated when Doc Holliday confronted him. Holliday openly accused Clanton of spreading falsehoods about the stagecoach robbery. Their heated exchange drew the attention of Tombstone's city marshal, Virgil Earp. Virgil intervened in an attempt to keep the peace. He warned both men that he would place them under arrest if they didn't settle down. At that point, Holliday left the area and returned to his room. Wyatt Earp later helped Holliday back to his lodging at Camilla Sidney Buckfly's boarding house, where he encouraged him to rest. Afterward, Wyatt returned home and turned in for the night. Meanwhile, Virgil Earp remained out and joined a card game that lasted through the night. The other participants included Ike Clanton, Tom McClory, Cochise County Sheriff Johnny Behan, and another man whose identity has been lost to history. They played cards until about dawn on October 26th. At the end of the game, Virgil reportedly tucked his pistol into his waistband, a detail Clanton would later recall during testimony. Sheriff Behan and Virgil both left to get some rest, but Clanton and McClory, who had not secured rooms, stayed out on the streets. By around 8 a.m., Clanton was still out, having consumed alcohol throughout the night. In front of the telegraph office, bartender E.F. Boyle encountered him and recommended he find a place to sleep. Clanton declined, saying he wasn't ready to turn in. Boyle later testified that Clanton was carrying a firearm and that he helped cover it to avoid drawing attention. According to Boyle, Clanton then made a troubling statement, suggesting that as soon as the Earps and Doc Holliday appeared on the street, there would be a confrontation. Concerned, Boyle went directly to Wyatt Earp's house to report the threat. He told Wyatt what Clanton had allegedly said about a potential street conflict involving the Earps and Holliday. In his own later testimony, Ike Clanton denied making such a statement and said he did not recall speaking to Boyle that morning at all. This discrepancy became part of the larger debate surrounding the tensions that culminated in the gunfight at the OK Corral later that same day. Later that morning, Ike Clanton retrieved his rifle and single-action revolver from the West End Corral, where he had left them earlier along with his wagon and team. After arming himself again, he resumed drinking and was reportedly telling others around town that he was looking for either Doc Holliday or one of the Earp brothers. By around 1 p.m., Virgil and Morgan Earp encountered Clanton on 4th Street. According to later accounts, Virgil approached him from behind and struck him to subdue him. The brothers then disarmed Clanton and escorted him to face Judge Wallace for violating Tombstone's ordinance number 9, which prohibited carrying firearms within city limits. While waiting for the judge, Virgil Earp stepped out to locate him so the hearing could proceed. During this time, Clanton later testified that Wyatt Earp used strong language toward him. He also claimed that Wyatt, Virgil, and Morgan Earp offered to return his rifle and fight him on the spot inside the courthouse, an offer Clanton said he refused. He further stated that he never made any threats toward the Earps. Judge Wallace fined Clanton $25, along with court costs for carrying weapons in town. After paying the fine, Clanton was released without his firearms. Virgil told him the confiscated rifle and revolver would be left at the Grand Hotel, a place frequented by cowboys when they were in Tombstone. Clanton later said he retrieved his weapons from William Soule, the jailer, a few days afterward. Around 1:30 to 2 p.m., the situation began to escalate further. Tom McClory had already been involved in a separate altercation with Wyatt Earp, and word had traveled fast. That afternoon, Tom's older brother, Frank McClory, and Ike's younger brother, Billy Clanton, rode into Tombstone. According to testimony and witness reports, the two men had heard from a neighbor named Ed Frink that Ike and Tom had been involved in confrontations the night before. Concerned, they came to town from Antelope Springs, about 13 miles east of Tombstone, where the group had been rounding up cattle. They had eaten breakfast with Tom and Ike just the previous morning. Both Frank and Billy arrived on horseback and were carrying rifles and revolvers, which was customary for men traveling through the rural areas outside Tombstone. Given the recent tensions in the region, including a skirmish between Apache warriors and U.S. Army forces near Tombstone just weeks earlier, carrying weapons in the countryside was considered normal and often necessary for personal protection. When Billy Clanton and Frank McClory arrived in Tombstone, their first stop was the Grand Hotel on Allen Street. There they encountered Doc Holliday. It wasn't long before they learned that their brothers, Ike Clanton and Tom McClory, had each been involved in separate physical altercations with the Earp brothers earlier that day. News of those incidents had already become a topic of discussion around town. Frank McClory, upset by what had happened, reportedly refused to have a drink and left the saloon with Billy to go find Tom. According to local law, visitors entering town were required to check their weapons at a public location, such as a hotel. However, Frank and Billy remained armed when they left the Grand Hotel. City Ordinance No. 9 required individuals to surrender their firearms within a reasonable time after entering town. However, the law did not clearly define what constituted reasonable time or how far a person could travel while still in possession of a weapon. This ambiguity allowed travelers to retain their firearms temporarily, especially if they were on their way to a livery, boarding house, or saloon. Around this time, a man named Coleman informed City Marshal Virgil Earp that the cowboys had been seen leaving the Dunbar and Dexter livery stable near the OK Corral and were still visibly armed. This prompted Virgil to make the decision to intervene and have them disarmed. Most of Tombstone's main corrals, including the OK Corral, were located just west of 4th Street, within a block or two of where Wyatt Earp reportedly observed the cowboys purchasing ammunition. Meanwhile, Cochise County Sheriff Johnny Bean, who had long-standing ties to the cowboys, later stated he didn't hear about the developing conflict until after 1:30 p.m., when he was at the barbershop. Bean had only just awakened after staying out late the previous night. Bean testified that after hearing about the tension, he set out to find the group. Around 2:30 p.m., he spotted both Clanton brothers and both McClory brothers gathered in a narrow empty lot off Fremont Street. The lot, about 15 to 20 feet wide, sat just west of 312 Fremont Street and was next to C.S. Fly's boarding house and photography studio. This location was roughly 6 lots away from the rear entrance to the OK Corral. Upon learning that Wyatt Earp had already been speaking with the cowboys near Spangenberg's gun shop, Virgil Earp retrieved a short, double-barreled shotgun, either a 10 or 12 gauge, from the Wells Fargo office just around the corner on Allen Street. Not wanting to attract attention or cause public concern, Virgil concealed the shotgun beneath a long overcoat as he walked to Hafford's saloon. There, he handed the shotgun to Doc Holliday and took Holliday's walking stick in exchange, allowing them to switch weapons discreetly. After leaving Spangenberg's, the cowboys walked to the rear of the OK Corral. Witnesses later claimed they overheard threats being made against the Earp brothers. The group then moved north, gathering in the vacant lot next to Fly's boarding house, the same place where Doc Holliday resided. Virgil Earp received multiple reports from Tombstone residents that the Clantons and McClorys were gathered on Fremont Street and visibly carrying weapons. Believing the situation could not be ignored, Virgil decided that he needed to respond as the town marshal. Several members of the local vigilance committee, concerned citizens who often supported law enforcement, offered to accompany him, armed. However, Virgil declined their help, choosing instead to rely only on official deputies. At that time, he had already deputized his brothers, Morgan and Wyatt, and also brought Doc Holliday on as a temporary deputy earlier that morning. According to Wyatt's later statements, Virgil and Morgan acted in their roles as city and deputy marshals, while Wyatt assisted as a deputy under their authority. Throughout the day, witnesses claimed that Ike Clanton had continued to make threats against the Earp brothers, even after being disarmed and fined earlier that morning. These remarks reportedly contributed to the Earps' decision to confront the cowboys, When the confrontation on Fremont Street escalated into gunfire, Ike Clanton did not join the fight. Instead, he rushed toward Wyatt Earp, insisting that he was unarmed and had no intention of engaging in violence. Wyatt later recalled telling him something to the effect of, "Then get to fighting or move out of the way." Clanton quickly ran into the front entrance of C.S. Fly's boarding house and managed to escape the incident without injury. In the lead-up to the shooting, Clanton had also asked for support from Billy Claiborne, another cowboy who had a reputation for being skilled with a firearm. Claiborne, however, was not carrying a weapon during the encounter and chose to retreat from the scene once the shooting began. By the end of the gunfight, Tom McClory, Frank McClory, and Billy Clanton had lost their lives. Their deaths marked a turning point in the ongoing conflict between the Earps and the Cowboys, with long-lasting consequences for all involved. Files murder charges against Earps. Following the well-known confrontation on Fremont Street in Tombstone, which resulted in the deaths of Frank and Tom McClory and Billy Clanton, Ike Clanton took legal action by filing murder charges against the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday. All were arrested but soon released on bail pending further proceedings. A preliminary hearing, overseen by Judge Wells Spicer, lasted for about a month. During this time, Ike Clanton gave testimony, claiming he had been mistreated by the Earps and Holliday on the evening before the shootout. He denied ever threatening them and asserted that when Virgil Earp ordered the Cowboys to disarm, the group complied, raising their hands with Tom McClory even opening his coat to show he was not carrying a weapon. Clanton alleged that Wyatt Earp reacted aggressively, pushing a revolver into his abdomen and declaring that a fight was inevitable. He supported Cochise County Sheriff Johnny Behan's version of events, which claimed Doc Holliday and Morgan Earp fired the first shots, with the remaining gunfire coming from their side as well. However, under further questioning, Clanton's version of events began to unravel. He made accusations that the Benson Stagecoach robbery, an unsolved crime, had been staged by the Earps and Holliday as a way to redirect funds or cover up bribery. He went further, claiming that each of the Earps and Doc Holliday had separately confessed their involvement in either the robbery itself or in allowing the culprits to escape justice. Clanton even suggested that Holliday had told him he took money from the stage before it departed and confessed to being responsible for the death of the stage driver. However, records showed that no money was ever officially reported missing, and the robbery had not been fully carried out. Given the severity of the allegations and the tense relationship between Clanton and Holliday, these claims were seen as highly improbable. Clanton also stated that Wyatt Earp had expressed concerns that some of his associates might reveal sensitive information, and that he personally felt at risk because of what he supposedly knew. By the end of his testimony, Clanton's story was full of contradictions. Rather than strengthening the prosecution's case, his statements raised serious doubts about the reliability of the charges. As a result, much of the case against the Earps and Holliday began to fall apart in the court of law. Judge Wells Spicer ultimately cleared the Earp brothers and Doc Holliday of wrongdoing. In his official decision, he highlighted that Ike Clanton, though unarmed the evening prior to the gunfight, had openly expressed hostility toward the Earps and Holliday. Clanton reportedly said that once he was armed, he intended to confront or challenge them. On the morning of the incident, Virgil Earp had detained Clanton for unlawfully carrying a revolver within city limits. At the time of the confrontation later that day, Clanton was not carrying any weapons. Spicer emphasized that Clanton had repeatedly claimed the Earps were intent on harming him. Yet he pointed out a key detail. Not only had they not done so earlier in the day, but Clanton was also able to walk away from the gunfight without injury. Spicer noted this as significant, stating that Clanton, being closest and most exposed, could have easily been harmed but was not. Later, Clanton's name surfaced again in connection to an ambush that seriously wounded Virgil Earp on December 30th, 1881, leaving Virgil with a permanently disabled left arm. Though Clanton's hat was found near the ambush site, his supporters claimed he had been in Contention City at the time. Due to the lack of solid evidence, the case was dropped. On March 18, 1882, another tragedy struck when Morgan Earp was fatally shot while playing billiards at Hatch's Saloon in Tombstone. The shot came through a door from a dark alley. Wyatt Earp was also targeted during the incident, but was not hit. Following Morgan's death, Wyatt came to believe that the legal system would not bring the perpetrators to justice. Acting on his federal authority as a U.S. Deputy Marshal, Wyatt organized a small escort to safely move Virgil and his wife to a train heading to their family home in Colton, California. At the Tucson rail station, Wyatt encountered Frank Stillwell, believed to be lying in wait, and Stillwell was fatally shot under unclear circumstances. In the days that followed, Wyatt assembled a larger group of allies, commonly referred to as the Earp vendetta ride. Their goal was to track down those they believed responsible for the attacks on their family. Although they did not locate Ike Clanton, several other cowboy associates lost their lives during the pursuit. By late April 1882, the Earps and Holiday left the Arizona Territory. None of them would return to face legal consequences for the events that followed Morgan's death. Ike Clanton's later life. Following the events at the OK Corral, the Clanton family sought a quieter life and relocated near their sister Mary's property. Finn Clanton arrived in the area in June 1882, with Ike joining him by August. By 1885, both brothers had established individual 160-acre ranches approximately 10 miles east of Springerville, close to the border with New Mexico. Around this time, a group of associates began to form around the Clantons. This loosely organized band included men such as Lee Renfro, G.W., Kid Swingle, Longhair Sprague, Billy Evans, and their brother-in-law, Evan Stanley. They operated primarily from a ranch known as the Cienega Amarilla, located near Springerville in Apache County, Arizona. On November 6, 1885, local cattleman Isaac Ellinger and his associate Pratt Plummer shared a meal with the Clantons and Renfro at the ranch. After dinner, Ike, Renfro, and Ellinger entered a nearby cabin. An incident occurred soon afterward in which Ellinger was critically wounded. He survived for several days before passing away, during which time he reportedly described the event as unjust and deliberate. Isaac's brother, William Ellinger, was a prominent figure in the regional cattle industry, with holdings that extended across multiple states and territories. His influence, both economically and politically, was significant. Both Ellinger brothers were members of the Apache County Stock Association, an organization actively working to protect livestock interests during a time when cattle theft was widespread. Over the following year, tensions continued to mount. On December 25, 1886, another troubling episode was linked to the group. Billy Evans, one of the Clanton associates, allegedly committed a reckless act that resulted in the death of a local man named Jim Hale. The motive was reported to be bizarre and deeply troubling, further damaging the group's reputation. By the mid-1880s, the Clantons and their associates were already under suspicion for their involvement in cattle theft. Reports circulated that livestock had been taken from the Springerville area and transported south through remote corridors along the Blue River and Eagle Creek, eventually reaching markets in Clifton in southern Arizona. While direct legal action was slow to come, these incidents contributed to the growing perception that the Clanton outfit had not entirely left their old ways behind, even after leaving Tombstone. In April 1887, the Apache County Stock Association took action to address the growing issue of livestock theft. They hired a Pinkerton detective to investigate and locate the individuals responsible. In addition, they appointed Jonas Jake V. Brighton, a constable from Springerville and a known range detective, to serve as a Secret Service officer in the effort. That same month, Finn Clanton was arrested on charges related to cattle rustling and was held in St. John's. Over the next several weeks, grand juries issued a series of indictments against the Clantons and several of their associates. These charges included cattle theft and even allegations of involvement in the death of a man named Isaac Ellinger. Brighton was tasked with locating Ike Clanton. After a 3-day search, Brighton stayed overnight on May 31, 1887, at Jim Pegleg, Wilson's ranch along Eagle Creek just south of Springerville. The following morning, Clanton appeared at the ranch. Brighton recognized him immediately. As Clanton began to leave, he retrieved his rifle, prompting Brighton to react. Clanton was struck by gunfire, which proved instantly fatal. A newspaper account from late June 1887 offered Brighton's version of events. According to the report, Brighton and another man, Mr. Miller, were eating breakfast at Wilson's ranch when Clanton arrived. Brighton stepped out to speak with him. Upon noticing Miller, who had also approached the door, Clanton quickly turned his horse toward nearby brush for cover while preparing to use his firearm. Brighton and Miller reportedly called for Clanton to stop. However, as he continued riding and began to raise his weapon, Brighton fired. One shot was said to have passed through Clanton's torso. A second shot struck the saddle and slightly grazed his leg. Clanton fell from his horse and was found lifeless when Brighton and Miller approached. The rancher, Jim Wilson, informed nearby residents, and 4 local men assisted in identifying Clanton and arranging for a basic burial, considering the remote location and limited resources. However, alternative accounts exist. One version claims Clanton's body remained untouched for several days before being quietly buried in an unmarked grave by Mormon settlers in a cemetery southeast of Eagar, Arizona, an area now known as the 26 Bar Ranch. In modern years, some historians and writers have questioned the official version of events. They speculate whether Clanton's death may have been a result of personal motives rather than an act of law enforcement. In June 1996, a Clanton descendant, Terry Ike Clanton, joined historian James A. Browning to search for Ike Clanton's final resting place. Near Eagle Creek in what is today Greenlee County, Arizona, they located a shallow grave beneath a large tree, which they believed to hold Clanton's remains. Since then, Terry Clanton has advocated for the remains to be exhumed and respectfully reburied in Tombstone's Boot Hill Cemetery. However, his efforts have not yet received support from Tombstone officials. Ike Clanton wasn't the fastest gun in the West, but he didn't have to be. His real weapon was influence, manipulation, and a deep understanding of how to stir the pot in a lawless land. While Wyatt Earp carved his legend into frontier justice, Clanton embodied the chaos that made towns like Tombstone famous. Love him or hate him, Ike Clanton helped shape the mythos of the Old West, one bold move at a time. If you enjoy diving into the untamed stories of outlaws, lawmen, and legends who built the Wild West, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss a shot from our channel. The Old West may be history, but its stories are just getting started.